2007, and I had no idea how much my life was going to change in 2007. We were pregnant with our second baby. Jocelyn is her name. She's about to be 18. But all of our lives actually were going to change in 2007 because that was the year that this thing called the iPhone was released. And so I personally was about to have my second child, and then, deal with this technological shift that I didn't know was going to be a major technological shift. And we were all going to be revolutionized in terms of how we oriented ourselves around technological access. Now, depending on your age, you might not remember that when Steve Jobs, who was working at Apple at the time, and he's the brainchild behind this invention of the iPhone, he said that we are going to revolutionize how we use the phone, or we're going to reinvent the phone. And the anticipation was crazy. Even though it took people a little bit of time to kind of figure out what this thing was going to be, by the time it was going to be released, there were lines, there was a waiting list. I mean, this was like a huge deal. And I don't think even Steve Jobs realized that this thing was going to be more about just talking on the phone. As a matter of fact, we use our phones way more for other things than we do talking on the phone. Because of this rise of like the iPhone, it like ushered in this new smartphone boom, this smartphone phone era, and it gave us a certain level of liberty and freedom that we've never ever had before. Now, I was thinking about that this weekend as we kick off this new series, For Unto Us. It's an annual time of year celebration where we are excited for a lot of things. And like I just said in my prayer, I think that our attention has been drawn away from the real reason for the season. But we call this season in the Christian tradition Advent. And Advent comes from the word Adventus, which means a coming or an arrival. And this coming and this arrival had been prophesied throughout the Old Testament for years and decades and hundreds of years, that God will establish his kingdom, this new kingdom, once and for all. And God's people, who were living under oppression, and they were living as exiles in foreign lands, and they didn't have a land of their own, and they were moving around all over the place. All of this would end because God would rescue, restore, and establish his people once and for all. And so there was a hope, and there was an anticipation of this coming kingdom. So like the iPhone ushered in this new era, giving us direct access and new liberties, the coming Messiah would do the same thing. The coming of this new kingdom would change the game for us. And so Advent, which is the celebration of what has come, which is the birth of Jesus, but also still what is to come. And I want to just pause right there, because I think that in this time of year when we're all, or most of us, are excited, some of us just love Christmas. I know some of y'all started putting up Christmas stuff at the end of October. That's how excited you are about this season. But I want you to know that there are some of us who, man, this is not the most wonderful time of the year. For whatever reason, there's a lot of sadness, and there's a lot of grief, and there's a lot of thought around loss and what could have been or what didn't happen. Some of us started the year on such a high, and we didn't anticipate that we would be in this place at this particular time as the year is closing. I want to encourage you to not just push past those emotions, if you're feeling that, I want to encourage you to just not dismiss these feelings of grief and disappointment that you might have. I want you to, as best you can, to embrace them while at the same time embracing hope as well. Because the prophet Isaiah, whose words we're going to read in just a moment, he's writing throughout his writings. He's writing about very hard realities and things that the people of God had to deal with and will deal with. Some of that was because of their own decisions. But he also reminds us that there's hope, that there's a God that loves us. And at the intersection of these hard realities and hope is the Advent. Jesus, this coming and this arrival of new things to come. And it's an opportunity for redemption and renewal. And for that reason, we can rejoice. Not because things are all good, but we can rejoice in the hope that because of Jesus, they will be all good. And so with that said, I want to just look at some of these words of hope that Isaiah has penned. Chapter number 9, just 2 verses, and this may be familiar to some of us. Here we go. For a child will be born for us, a son will be given to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. The dominion will be vast, and its prosperity will never end. He will reign on the throne of David and over his kingdom to establish and sustain it with justice and righteousness from now on and forever. The zeal of the Lord of armies will accomplish this. I want to just use for a subject as we kick off this Advent series, a game-changing gift. That's what happened when Jesus was born, or as Isaiah has said to us, for a child will be born for us, a son will be given to us. It was a game-changing gift. Now, this game-changing gift showed up 700 years after Isaiah 9 was written. And Jesus shows up in an animal pen. I mean, this is not necessarily how any of us would have drawn up the story. Jesus is born to teenage parents. They were married. Teenage parents with no fanfare. And the arrival, the main characters, the accommodation, even the audience, which I just said was basically some animals, would fit no rational scenario in our mind when we're thinking about a coming hope, when we're thinking about a coming Messiah, when we're thinking about God establishing his kingdom. But isn't that how the most game-changing moments happen? Like all of a sudden, just unexpected things just kind of happen out of the blue. And this is what we see happening with Jesus' birth. That, again, this is 700 years when Isaiah is writing this before it would happen. And this is what I love about the Bible. I just got to pause here for just a second, because it's so amazing in terms of all that it contains, the twists and the turns and the plots and the subplots and all of these fascinating storylines. You have allegory and you have parables and you have thread lines that can be traced from Genesis all the way to Revelations, from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And by the way, in Isaiah chapter number 9, this prophecy is part of a thread line about Jesus and his coming kingdom. And Isaiah had over 40 prophecies about Jesus' first coming, including Isaiah 7:14, which he says, which he's talking about the birth of Jesus being born to a virgin. So all of these different things, you should go back and you should trace this, and you should look at all of the different prophecies that came to fruition in the New Testament. And one other thing, just food for thought. This might be for the Bible nerds here. All right. So Isaiah, 66 chapters in Isaiah. There are 66 books in the Bible. The Old Testament has 39, which focuses a lot on God's judgment, which is what Isaiah is writing in the first 39 books, or the first 39 chapters of Isaiah, about judgment. But then in the last 27, he's writing about hope, which is the New Testament, also referencing the hope of Jesus. Listen, this isn't by accident that these things are happening. This isn't just some book full of tales and full of cool stories, or even things that stretch us in certain ways. No. This is intentional work by God. And there are three confirmations that I want to highlight from Isaiah that show us or really point to how Jesus was a game-changing gift for us. If you're taking notes, here we go. The first one is, this was a confirmation of God's love for us. For a child will be born for us, a son will be given to us. This is confirmation of God's love, which is unconditional, and it is in no way deserved. Additionally, this is what true love does, right? True love shows up in ways that, man, overwhelm us because we know we don't deserve it. True love is long-suffering, and it is sacrificial. That's what true love is. And I think this is part of the reason why we have such a high divorce rate. And listen, this is no shade to anyone who has experienced divorce. There are situations and circumstances that lead to these sorts of things. But I'm talking about how we just separate because it gets hard. Or we just go in a different direction because it gets difficult for us. But the reality of love is that it's messy and that it's hard. And oftentimes it is undeserved. You just love because. And this is Jesus' birth. This is a confirmation of God's love for us, because creation and humanity had gone off the rails. And Jesus was the reset of this. It was God coming in the flesh to be with us when he could have just started over. He could have just hit the reset button and scrapped the whole plan. But he didn't. You know, when I was thinking about this whole idea of Jesus coming being a confirmation of God's love for us, I had a really interesting thought. One of my favorite movies is a movie called Boys in the Hood. And it's one of my favorite movies because it was a pivotal moment in my life. And I remember my father really teaching me a lot of different things through this movie. And so if you haven't seen this movie, there's a pivotal scene where this character named Ricky, who's played by Morris Chestnut, he's killed. He's killed by this guy right here in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. This is the scene. And there was just this high school beef, and this was the height of gang activity in LA, and in South Central LA. And so Ricky is running, and he's not able to outrun being shot at, and he's eventually killed. It is a tragic moment. And it's even more tragic because Ricky is getting ready to go to college, and all he needs to do is get a certain score on the SAT, and he gets it, but he can't go because he's been murdered. But then in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you have Ice Cube. And Ice Cube, his character's name was Doughboy in the movie. And Doughboy and Ricky were brothers. And so Doughboy decides because his brother has been killed, he's going to get revenge and go after his brother's killer. What you're seeing here in this photo, you see the blood splatter on Doughboy's face because he has avenged his brother's death. And I bring this up in the context of what we're talking about is because this is how humanity responds to being wronged. Now, this is an extreme case. We're not running out killing each other. Hopefully nobody in here. But we kill each other with our words. We cancel each other at the least little thing. When things don't go our way, or when bad things happen that we don't like, or things are done against us, this is how we respond. And this is just an extreme look of how we respond when we are wronged. But look at how God responds to us. How he constantly pursues us. How he loved us so much that he would come in human flesh to be with us. I believe this is why the fruit of the Spirit, the first one is love. I don't think you can get to the other ones without love. Love just kicks the whole thing off. You definitely can't get to long suffering. You definitely can't get to patience. All of that is connected to love. The ultimate game changer for us is love. This is why Peter says in 1 Peter 4:8, love covers a multitude of sin. You know why Peter could write that? Because Peter understood what it meant to wrong God, to wrong Jesus, and still be loved. And the gift of salvation for us could have come in any other form, but it came in the form of a baby, in the form of a child. Think about the vulnerability and the dependence of a child. The gift of Jesus is for us, given to us by God, for one reason only, because God loves us unconditionally. And there's nothing that we can do for God to not love us. The second thing I want to point out here, and why this is a game-changing gift for us, is because it was a confirmation of righteous leadership that we could trust. It says, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. Let's hit the rewind button real quick, because when we see what's happening in the context of the Old Testament, the leadership that God's people were under, either from kings that were their kings, or when they were in exile, it was often bad. It was not good on a regular basis. And as a matter of fact, if you just look at Israel and Judah, which were the two kingdoms that made up the people of God, if you just look at those combined, they only had 8 good kings, and they were all for Judah, none for Israel. And even the good kings, they had some serious missteps. I'll just give you 2. David and Jehoshaphat. Now, David, listen, made for Lifetime TV special. My guy, like, he's murdering, people. He's having affairs. David was off the chain. The thing about David, though, is he always owned his stuff. But nevertheless, he has some serious missteps. And then Jehoshaphat was a great king, and he led the people well. But he entered into relationships with foreign governments that God told him not to. He compromised. So even the good kings had missteps. I find it very interesting as we fast forward to 2024, we still have some leadership challenges. As a matter of fact, there was a study done in 2019. There was a Barna study, and this is what it says. 82% of young adults say we have a crisis in leadership. I would say it's more than young adults. But the reason the focus is on young adults is because the young adults are like, we don't know what is happening with the future. what is going on with our leadership. And when they were asked, like, well, why do you think this is? 50% of them said, man, people just too distracted. They're not focused on what's going on and what's happening. So there's a crisis of leadership with God's people in the Old Testament. There's a crisis of leadership right now. So this whole idea of Jesus coming and the government being on his shoulders was about the responsibility of Jesus ushering us into a new era and being an example for us of what it means to lead well. We should also know that these names that are given, like Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace, names when they were given to you, particularly in the biblical times, they were prophetic in nature. So you were given a name, and that was to be what your destiny was going to be. So this was to be Jesus's destiny. And so the gift that we get in Jesus and his example is how to live, how to love, and how to lead. Now we should know that the term Christian, it literally means little Christ. So how we live, how we love, and how we lead should be distinct if we follow Jesus. It should be a reflection of God's kingdom. So in a world that is so corrupt, saying we have a crisis of leadership and there's a lot of self-centeredness, how much better should it be for those who follow Jesus, who've received the gift of Jesus, to show up as regents? You know what the word regents means? It means to represent the king when he is away. That's what it means. And we have, as a regent, you have all power and you have all authority because it's been given to you by the king to represent him while he is away. What a thing for us to show up in the world, receiving the gift of Jesus, to be regents, to represent him and usher in this new era. I think we have some work to do. Thirdly, I think that the gift of Jesus is a game-changing gift for us because it was also a confirmation of what Jesus' lordship would bring. Listen to what it says. The dominion will be vast. Its prosperity will never end. He will reign on the throne of David and over his kingdom to establish and sustain it with justice and righteousness from now on and forever. The word dominion means supreme authority or nothing or no one that is higher. Now, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about all of y'all who play spades. And this is the time of season, too, when families getting together and friends, they're playing. If you don't know what spade, just ask somebody afterwards. They'll tell you, all right? They're not going to teach you, but they'll tell you, okay? So I'm just for the people in the room who don't know, like, oh, can you teach me to play spades? That's the wrong question. They're not going to teach you. You're going to have to sit and learn and watch and try to figure it out, get beat several times. But anyway, the point that I'm making here is when we think about dominion, okay, when you play spades, there is a high card that is above every other card. For some of us, it's the big joker. Other people have different ones. Don't ask Pastor Trevor. Don't play with him either. But there's a high card that has dominion over every single card. And so Jesus' lordship is going to usher in this dominion, not just to have lordship and just be the big the one who has all of authority just to have it. No. It was to usher in prosperity, justice, and righteousness, which is what we could expect under Jesus' authority, under his leadership. What does this mean? Prosperity, let me just help us. Prosperity is not about lavishness or stuff. That's not what it's about. It's not about having all of these things and just, feeling all good about the things that we've accomplished and accumulate. No, it's not about those things. And those things are not bad. But really what it's about is being in a situation where you don't have any worries about your needs. That's what prosperity is. If you really think about it, prosperity is I can get up and I don't have to worry about anything. And even if I don't have it, like I know I can get it. That's what prosperity is. Even if I don't know how I'm going to get it, I know the Lord will provide for me. That's prosperity. This is why, fast forward to Matthew 6, and we talked about this last week, when Jesus said, don't worry, he's talking about prosperity. Don't worry about what you're going to eat. Don't worry about what you're going to wear. That's like 80% of our worries every day. Because we can seek first the kingdom of heaven. This is what he's saying. So Jesus' lordship, when we submit ourselves, lordship means that we are submitted, okay? So when we submit to Jesus' lordship, this is what we can expect. The first one is prosperity. The next one is justice and righteousness. It literally just means right government or for things to be equitable. We got a lot of inequities that we talk about, that we feel, that we wrestle through. Some related to race and class and gender and all of these things. We got a lot of inequities. But literally under Jesus' lordship, we can experience right government and equality. And we see this in the Gospels. When we go to the Gospels and we see Jesus' life, we see how he interacted with everyone, with women and with children and with Gentiles and tax collectors, even people in authority. Jesus was interacting with everybody, and this is what got him killed. Hey, Jesus, you can't hang with those people. You can't talk with those people. You can't engage with those folks. That's not the order of things. But Jesus is entering into a new order, ushering us into a new order. And when we receive the gift of Jesus, we are submitted to his lordship, and we trust that he's going to lead us and guide us, and we don't have to be worried about all of the things that we are worried about. And it says that these things will never end. They're both now and forever. It's eternal. Let me see if I can land a plane for us like this. If you have Instagram, I would love for you to consider following this account called Jude 3. And Jude 3 is a wonderful organization. They are really apologetically focused. All right. Test. Okay. I don't know what that was about. They're apologetically focused, and apologetics is really about giving a defense for why we believe what we believe. But so I was just came across this story on Jude 3's account, and it was an interview with Dr. Robert Smith, who is a profound theologian and preacher, and who's retired now. But Dr. Smith was telling a story that I hadn't heard before. And he said that maybe about 14 years ago, his son was working in a restaurant, and there were about 4 guys in the restaurant, and they were closed. And some gentlemen came in to rob the restaurant. And his son was working in the back, and they called his son up to the front, and they were trying to get the cash register open. And so he was helping them get the cash register open, but somehow or another it jammed, and they couldn't get it open. So 3 of the 4 guys, they just kind of panicked and they ran out. But one guy stood up on the counter, and he aimed his gun at Dr. Smith's son, and he shot him one time, piercing his heart, killing him instantly. And Dr. Smith said that was such a tragic thing for him and his family to have to deal with. But he started talking about how God was really working on him when it comes to forgiveness. And he said that the Lord really challenged him about how to forgive this young man. And so he began to write this young man letters while he was in prison. And the young man eventually wrote Dr. Smith back, and they had a writing relationship, is what he said. And Dr. Smith eventually told this man who killed his son, "I love you." And the young man wrote back and said, "I've never heard those words from my father. My father never told me that he loved me." And Dr. Smith said, "I don't want y'all to get this thing twisted and feel like I don't still hurt and my heart doesn't throb, because it does. But at the same time, as God is healing my heart, he's also healing this young man. And I'm just here to tell you that when you receive the gift of Jesus in your life, it's transformational." Dr. Smith said that there's no way that I could love this young man. As a matter of fact, he said forgiveness is impossible without God. It's impossible without receiving the gift of Jesus. And Dr. Smith goes on to say, imagine this young man never hearing from his father that he loves him. So here's the thing. Dr. Smith has received the game-changing gift of Jesus in his life. And as a result of receiving that game-changing gift, he's now able to give that game-changing gift to a young man who's never heard his father say, "I love you." That's what the hope of Jesus is. It's the ability for us to still hurt, to still be frustrated, to still be disappointed, but to still show up because we have hope. And I love what the young theologian John Onwuchekwa says. He says, tragedy doesn't ruin us. Hopelessness does. Tragedy didn't ruin Dr. Smith. But because he received the game-changing gift, the hope of Jesus, he's able to be healed and continue his healing while also still giving hope. And I question any of us who say that we follow Jesus and we're not showing up in the world hopeful. I'm not saying we don't have moments of despair. I'm not saying we don't have moments of frustration. I'm just saying that hope wins.